Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that. And welcome to our four witnesses here before us today. We look forward to your testimony on how Congress can build on some previous investments that we made to strengthen our railroad system to ensure that we can safely and efficiently transport both goods and people. Americans rely on the U.S. rail network to safely move roughly 28 million passengers and 1.6 billion tons of goods each and every year. And no state better exemplifies the reality of and the opportunities for passenger and freight rail than my home state of Michigan. Michigan is home to roughly 3,900 miles of track, including more than 600 miles of state-owned rail lines managed by the Michigan Department of Transportation, as well as 29 private freight rail operators and companies. Michigan is also home to 3 Amtrak lines that operate throughout our state. And as home of the auto industry and the heart of American manufacturing, Michigan's freight rail network delivers cars, agricultural products, construction materials, and everyday goods all over our state, as well as across international borders. Michigan is also leading the way when it comes to passenger rail. The Michigan Department of Transportation has effectively taken advantage of resources that Congress provided to improve passenger rail service. This includes efforts to restore Amtrak service to the historic Michigan Central Station in downtown Detroit and to expand that service across the Canadian border into Windsor in the coming years, a project that I'm going to continue to fight for. Continued investment in passenger rail infrastructure and capacity is absolutely essential to realizing this vision and to improving the growing services across our national network. It must be a key priority for Congress and in the next surface transportation reauthorization bill. But let's be clear, Michigan's rail infrastructure progress is largely thanks to the investments we made in the bipartisan infrastructure law. The bipartisan infrastructure law invested a historic $102 billion for rail infrastructure, including funding for the Federal-State Partnership for Passenger Rail Grant Program and the Corridor ID program, as well as the creation of critical new programs like the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program. This funding has specifically allowed Michigan to conduct the analysis and the planning that they need to support future expansion of passenger rail on all 3 of our Amtrak lines, the Wolverine, the Blue Water, and the Pierre Marquette. The Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program we created is also improving safety and efficiency across Michigan communities. It's helping the city of Monroe improve response times for emergency response, as well as ease traffic congestion. It's funding the elimination of a dangerous rail crossing in Trenton, Michigan. It's consolidating 3 railroad crossings at a key intersection on Lanyo and Central Streets in Detroit to improve safety, mobility, and freight transportation throughout the region. And it's giving Manistee and Kalamazoo the runway they need to plan for the removal of harmful crossings that are causing issues for their residents. Michigan is certainly not alone. Communities across the country have benefited from increased resources to strengthen their rail infrastructure, but this work is far from over. Programs like Corridor ID and Railroad Crossing Elimination Grants can only reach their full potential if we follow up with continued investment to ensure projects that are already underway are not abandoned midway. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about the impact this investment is having on the ground and the importance of maintaining these programs for the rail network. And finally, we know that a fundamental part of strengthening our rail system is taking necessary steps to make it safer. We've seen that when railroad safety is compromised, entire communities suffer. We all witnessed that with the East Palestine train derailment in 2023, but there are many more close calls that don't make the news. And our communities are calling for action to prevent tragedy from impacting their residents. One such case is in Romulus, a city in southeast Michigan that has seen multiple train derailments over the past 5 years. We received testimony for the record from Romulus Mayor Robert McCreight, and I would like to enter that into the record without objection, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
The testimony sheds light on his community's firsthand experience with derailments where first responder safety was put in jeopardy because they were not properly informed of hazmat cargo in the derailed cars. He's calling for congressional action. And that's why last Congress I supported the Railway Safety Act, which addressed key concerns like first responder communication and preparation, wayside detection improvements, inspection standards, and two-crew requirements, and much more. Last Congress, we also laid groundwork for bipartisan action to address concerns that emerged from East Palestine crash. And it's my hope that this committee will be able to act in the same bipartisan manner once again. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Shiawassee Economic Development Partnership, the County of Manistee, and the other Michigan stakeholders reaching out to my office to share their perspective on the needs for their rail system. And I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you here today and how we can take steps to build on the bipartisan infrastructure law and ensure the safety of our national rail network. One thing that occurred in each of your testimonies is you discussed the importance of the down payment that the bipartisan infrastructure law made in our rail infrastructure. But what I also heard is that the job is clearly not done yet. The bill certainly provided certainty by giving advanced appropriations to key rail programs like Chrissy. Mr. Gilbertson, you mentioned that in particular in your testimony, and the Rail Crossing Elimination Program. This means that that for the last few years, these programs have not been reliant on yearly appropriations process. And I'm very concerned about the funding cliff that we're approaching with these programs when the BIL expires next year. Without advanced appropriations, the only way to avoid a huge funding cliff is for our rail network, for their yearly appropriations budget, to plus up rail infrastructure funding by the billions. That will be difficult in our current budgetary environment to do that. So if I could hear briefly from each of you, from each member of this panel, what do you believe are the major consequences if Congress allows rail infrastructure funding to basically run off this cliff? What are the downsides that we need to know about? Mr. Jeffries, you want to start, and we'll work down the panel.
Absolutely, thanks. So certainly, you know from talking to us many times, we're very proud of all the private investment we put into the network. At the same time, we do a major project with states, communities, municipalities, partnering with them to do projects that probably otherwise wouldn't be done. And these are projects of national significance, regional significance, increased freight flows, increased safety. And so the primary source for the public entities to tap into is it's the Grade Crossing Elimination Program, it's INFRA, it's MEGA. On the short lines primarily, it's Chrissy. And so my concern, if you let those programs be dormant or stagnate, is that there's going to be a lot of missed opportunities to partner with public agencies throughout the entire country. You've seen how oversubscribed these programs are to do projects that otherwise may not get done that will have real benefits to cities and towns across the U.S. and the movement of freight, goods, and people.
Very good. Mr. Gilbertson.
I would just echo that and say that the advance appropriations are really critical. There's a planning function, particularly for small carriers, where you have a work window that's defined by climate sometimes. I mean, we have 4 months where we can do the work. If you miss that cycle, you miss a year. Similarly, there's often lining up non-federal partners that includes the private entity, but also public entities in some cases. And again, anything that adds to the complexity of that may mean it doesn't happen at all.
Very good. Mr. Crumper.
Thank you, Senator Peters. I'd mention two things. Number one, infrastructure built today is cheaper than infrastructure built tomorrow. And so any delay in being able to fund these programs and get the work done not only causes the delay, but rises the cost for them in the future. Second, with respect to Brightline, both ourselves, the state DOT, the local communities have tapped into these programs for safety programs. And we look at safety from an engineering, education, and an enforcement standpoint. And so law enforcement have been using these grants to warn and blitz grade crossings. We've all talked about the impact of grade crossing safety. They've used these grants to go above and beyond the Federal Railroad Administration regulations for crossing safety improvements. And they've also used these grants from an education standpoint for public service announcements, et cetera. And so my fear is if you pull back on funding, you would also see an increase in safety incidents.
All right, we're real concerned. Mr. Anthony, the last word.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, we need certainty of funding. It helps the local communities and the rail industries to be able to plan. It helps us to be able to look in ways to create the new workforce and what is needed in communities, towns, and villages, especially rural and small communities. It also is important to note that all types of the infrastructure programs that we have has a trust fund or other long-term funding commitments. And if we had that mechanism long-term for rail industry development and community engagement and local leadership involvement, I think we could plan better as a nation.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.